Welcome to Sitcom Showdown, a podcast that reviews classic sitcom episodes and inducts them into our very own Hall of Fame. As usual, one of us has chosen a sitcom episode and the other guy has no idea what it's going to be. Will they already know it? Will they love it? Can they be convinced that it's worthy? Let's find out on Sitcom Showdown. Hello again and welcome to another episode of Sitcom Showdown. It's Jeffers here and I've got Steve with me.
G'day.
Hey. We're back.
Yes.
For more sitcom action. And it's my turn this time around.
What's it going to be?
It's going to be Filthy Rich and Catflap.
Very interesting.
Yes. If you'd never heard of it before, just the title alone would have you hooked, wouldn't it?
It's got a ring to it.
Yeah. Filthy,
Definitely.
comma, rich, ampersand, catflap, full stop.
Yep.
So that's what's happening this week. Let's skip ahead to one of our later questions we normally ask each other, and I'm going to assume that you've seen this, but not for a long time.
Correct.
Right.
Seen it all, but not for a very, very long time.
Oh, okay. That's almost an ideal situation because you're familiar with it, and yet it'll be new to you.
Yep.
All right.
Could be, who knows how long since I've watched it.
2 decades.
15 years?
Yeah.
20 years?
Yeah. Easily, I think. Anyway, let's go into an overall description of what Filthy Rich and Catflap is.
Let's do that.
Yes. All right. Well, there's a one-liner on IMDb that says satire about a failed actor, his sleazy agent, and drunken bodyguard.
Sounds pretty accurate.
It does sound pretty accurate, but it doesn't tell the whole story, I must say. So the show revolves around Richie Rich, who's this Z-list ultra-minor celebrity, even if you could call him that. And he's got his minder, Eddie Catflap, and his agent, Ralph Filthy, otherwise known as Filthy Ralph. So in reality, Richie was just this regional TV links guy, and it says in the series it's on TVS, which actually existed for 11 years. So they held the ITV license for the South, so it was TV South or something. Anyway, the continuity links man, as people know, is the guy who says, coming up next on TBS is such and such, and at 7:30 there's blah, 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 and, you know, that sort of stuff. So that's the pinnacle of his career. And he was probably only in it for 6 months or something, I like to imagine, before he got sacked for being a complete dickhead. He struggles to get any showbiz work, but not only because Richie himself is crap, but also because Filthy Ralph is less of an agent, really, and more of a seedy brothel owner.
Leech.
A leech on the fringes of the showbiz world. And yeah, likewise, his minder Eddie is a dirty alcoholic freeloader, and he dislikes Richie as much as anyone else. But Richie sort of lives in this fantasy world. It's not a literal fantasy sitcom, but you know, all the stars are his friends. And
It's got to be a fantasy that he actually needs a bodyguard, doesn't it?
No, exactly. Who's going to come after him for anything? Nobody.
No, there's no
No
legion
one's
of
ever heard
adoring
of him.
fans.
Nah. But this is his mindset, you know. So
Just an ego thing.
yeah, and one day he'll get his dream job as a game show host, and he's sort of always working towards that. And yeah, they're on the fringes of the seedy, low-rent elements of showbiz where, you know, all the chaos and craziness happens as Richie tries to climb to the top. So that's, you know, a bit of a rundown on it. It was on BBC Two in the UK. Mm-hmm. And as you know, Steve, the stars, the famous people in it, there are a few. Oh, whip out some names for us.
Well, I've got Rik Mayall, Edmonson, and Nigel Planer as the main 3 roles.
Yeah.
And then it's just guest stars, I guess.
Do you remember any of the guest stars?
Mid-year is the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
That's a classic episode. I'm drawing a blank on others at this stage.
Well, there's one episode where they've got Mel Smith and Norman Hale, or is it Mr. Pace? I don't know. So one half of Hale and Pace and one half of Smith and Jones. And then there's another episode where they've got Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie as the art critics. So they pull in a few of their mates. But of course, this is written by Ben Elton, and Rik Mayall throws a few gags in as well.
Is he, who's actually credited as the writer? Is it
Ben.
Just Ben.
Yeah. So, well, Ben Elton, let's put this timeline wise. So this is after The Young Ones, after the second series of The Young Ones. So this is what Rik and Aid did In Between the Young Ones and Bottom. So it's typical over-the-top Rik Mayall stuff. Vivian in the Young Ones was Adrian Edmondson, and he's Eddie here. Nigel Planer, you wouldn't even recognise him in this show. Filthy Ralph and Neil are complete opposites, and he's such a good actor and very good at the characters.
Yeah,
You just never
great character.
Oh, it's amazing, the transformation. So this is just after Blackadder 2. So I had to go back and research this because I thought, surely it's after Blackadder. So this was made in 1986, Filthy Rich and Catflap, and broadcast in 1987. So Blackadder 2 was broadcast in 86, and Blackadder 3 was broadcast in 1987. So I reckon he was writing Filthy Rich and Catflap while he was writing Blackadder 2. What a peak time of output.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
He was on fire.
He totally was on fire. Blimey. So my personal background to watching this one is, I'm guessing, if it was broadcast in the UK in 87, it probably came to ABC in 88. So I would have been, I don't know, roughly around 15. And of course, we had a beautiful video recorder, which we got in 85. No, the beginning of 86, I tell a lie. Anyway, it was the world's greatest video recorder, 5-head hi-fi. I don't know even if you could get that stuff in Australia, but we got it duty free.
That's right, in Hong Kong.
Yes. So I recorded it, and then, every day when I come home from school, I'd just watch it over and over and over again. And I think it's no exaggeration to say, easily I would have watched the whole series more than 100 times.
That's crazy.
If not possibly 300 or 400. It is crazy. But that's what I'd do throughout my teenage years. I'd watch Filthy Rich and Catflap. And what's that fantastic Mel Brooks movie, The Western?
Blazing Saddles.
Blazing Saddles. How could I forget the name? So I'd just watch that over and over again as well. To the point where I can now recite, or still recite, all of Filthy Rich and Catflap. If you just start with one line, then I'll be able to do the rest of the series from there. So that tells you where I stand on this series. I've got 6 pages of notes here, so I'm going to have to go through pretty quickly. But that sets it up. Shall we go away and watch it, or do you have some comments on this as well?
No, I'm intrigued to find out which episode it is.
Yeah?
You going to tell us now?
I will. It's called Dinner Party. And it's episode 3 of the only series they did. They only did 6 episodes. It wasn't very critically well received. And we're going to watch episode 3. So going with Yonderland, in the last episode we recorded, was series 1, episode 3 as well.
Yeah. Interesting.
Okay, well, let's go back in time 30 years and watch Filthy Rich and Catflap.
Let's go to a dinner party.
Cool.
Eddie, how did you get so much meat in your trousers?
That's what all the girls say.
Tommy's coming round in 10 minutes and we haven't cooked a thing. Let's please get this stuff in the oven. I'll never get it all in.
Oh, sounds a bit rude.
I think I'm going to need something to lever it in with.
Oh, sounds a bit ruder.
No matter how much I stuff in, there's still loads more waiting to be pushed in.
It sounds even ruder than it was before.
Thank you for these observations, Eddie. I just feel that every culinary exchange should be accompanied by the mad rantings of a brain-dead vegetable.
So, Steve, we're back, and that episode went for a surprising 33 and a bit minutes. Pretty long.
Yep. And there's a lot of dialogue in there.
There's a lot of everything in there. Before I launch into my gargantuan stack of notes, what impressions have you got, or thoughts, or anything?
I think we should come back to them.
Okay. We can do
Can we
that
do
as we
that?
go along. Yeah, I'm going to try and race through this. So there's about 6 scenes. In scene 1, Richie's planning a dinner party for his great big showbiz mates, who he's probably never met. obviously. Tarby, Brucey, Tommy O'Connery, Leslie Crowther, and the other big-name game show hosts. Anyway, so he's got all the table settings done and labelled which chairs they're sitting on and everything, and then Eddie finally wakes up, and predictably enough, they get into some sort of argument, and there's, it's a big, long scene, and there's lots of brilliant gags in there, but, you can tell how it's going to go when the opening line is, Eddie Catflap emerges from the arms of Morpheus, or perhaps a nearby elephant has blown off.
Do my senses deceive me? Has Eddie Catflap emerged from the arms of Morpheus, or perhaps a nearby elephant has blown off?
Nope. Right first time, it is I, Smelly Eddie. To whiffy, Mr. Love him. Ready for anything as long as it's alcoholic.
He's not too upset about being labelled smelly, is he?
No, he's not interested in impressing Richie by smelling nice.
But Richie continues to crack these jokes.
At his expense, yeah.
At his expense for minutes and minutes and minutes.
Yeah, just winding him up and refusing to acknowledge him until Eddie cracks.
Yeah.
No, it's a great setup, and it tells you where things are going. Anyway, after Eddie finally cracks and Richie finally properly says good morning to him after being so cruel, he explains that they're going to have a dinner party. And he fills him in on the whole plan and all this sort of stuff. And Eddie says, well, last night while I was watching TV AM in the lab, this morning, I saw a fantastic ad for a new mag called Ponzi Cooking.
Yeah,
when you buy part 1, you get part 2 completely free. And so they go off to the newsagents just by opening up the door, walking through it, and it's in the set next door.
Yeah.
And so this is a big part of the show because the characters are constantly doing asides to the camera, and they break all this fourth wall stuff. And Eddie says, blimey, the newsagents has got a lot closer since we moved into a smaller studio. Anyway, and they go through this whole clumsily set up newsagent routine where they try, they say, we haven't got any money, so we'll take part 2 completely free. And
she's not having a bar of that.
No. And then there's more showbiz talk. And of course, Richie's sort of, saying to the lady behind the counter, don't faint, treasure the moment. Yes, it's me, Richie Rich.
Yep.
And she doesn't recognise him, of course. And this gives you an insight into the way Richie's mind works. And poor old Eddie's just ashamed to be accompanying him because he's a bit of a loony.
Yeah, there's no way he's getting the magazine for free because of his fame, his non-existent fame.
Exactly. Anyway, so they just walk straight back into their apartment after doing that, and it's still one long scene. They haven't cut anywhere else yet, even though they've been to the newsagent and come back. Anyhow, they completely dispense with the entire Ponzi Cooking thing and just decide to go to the supermarket.
Yep.
To buy 400 pounds of oven chips. But then we get onto the supermarket scene, which is scene 2. And they're at the supermarket buying ingredients, which ends up, in a nutshell, with Eddie and Richie crushing all the fruit, knocking down a display pyramid of food tins, committing meat robbery in front of tons of witnesses. Richie gets a bottle smashed over his head and his testicles crush, and then they smash 2 glass supermarket doors trying to escape, and they run away with all the meat stuffed down Eddie's trousers, which are enormous trousers. And of course, this is done because Richie, as usual, says, Eddie, never mind, we haven't got any money, I'm a celebrity. Celebrities don't need money. And then he tries to charm the checkout lady for £200 worth of meat.
He didn't learn his lesson from the newsagent, that's for sure.
Absolutely not. But I timed that scene, and it's exactly 4 minutes. And then I noted down what they packed into it, but we might get around to this later. So they get back to the flat. This is scene 3, but they quickly realise the police are going to get them at any minute because, as Eddie points out, well, look, you're Richie Rich. Everyone knows you robbed this supermarket. You're going to prison. So they decide to ring Filthy Ralph, Richie's agent, and they've got the intention of blackmailing him to take the rap for the robbery. But Filthy, as he often does and can do very well, talks himself out of it and convinces them all they need is an alibi. So he suggests that he's going to book them a show. And then when the audience are watching the show, Eddie's going to go around and turn all their watches back to the time they robbed the store, so they've got an alibi. But, we soon find out that the show he's booked Richie to do his act is a peepee booth peep show. And so we move on to scene 4, which is Richie's so-called stand-up comedy show at the Peepo Bar.
Goodness.
It's like 5th-rate musical cabaret. So
It's a disaster.
Anyway, Richie does his act, and Eddie's just basically heckling him. Tell us a joke, you fat bastard. Anyway, the police have tracked them down to the Peepo Bar, which leaves them without an alibi, so this whole plan collapses, and they get taken off to prison.
Yes.
Yes, awaiting something.
Waiting trial or something.
Yeah, awaiting charge or awaiting trial or whatever it is. Yeah, so scene 5, prison. So Richie's fantasizing about this upcoming trial of the century because he's a big celebrity and all the media will be on it and all that.
Goodness.
Filthy arrives with a lawyer for them. Pervy Sir Peter Spurty QC. And of course, the lawyer's crap though, so they have to hatch an escape plan, which seems to be cribbed from every single World War II movie.
It's The Great Escape.
It's The Great Escape, mixed with about 5 other movies.
Yep.
Oh, it's a brilliant escape plan.
Well, we better escape. Never! There is no choice! The meat is in my trousers, Tommy is coming round in a couple of hours to hear his fantastic golfing anecdote, and you're banged up in a slammer!
Don't be disgusting! I have never been banged up a slammer in my life! But you're right, we've got to escape.
I have a plan. What we have to do is set up a complicated system of stooges to find out exactly what the guards are up to. Then we dig 3 tunnels and hide the dirt in our trousers. We forge some German documents and make the clothes of some French peasant workers out of these blankets. Then we wheel the wooden horse out into the exercise yard. Yes. We build a glider and we pole vault over the fence. What do you think?
Pathetic.
Let's do it then. Yeah.
So the boys escape, and this brings us to the last scene of the show. They're back at home, and Richie decides to start cooking, so he orders Eddie to unload the big trousers. Because even though they've done this peep show, and then they've since gone to prison, and they've done all this stuff since they robbed the supermarket, Eddie has still got all this tons of frozen meat in his trousers.
Yeah, and it still appears to be frozen when they get back to the flat eventually.
Oh, they get all the meat in the oven, and this whole sequence is one of the greatest and most unsubtle sitcom gags ever performed. It's absolutely brilliant. And they turn on the gas, but then the doorbell rings. And they're so excited. Yeah, exactly, because they think it's Tubby and Brucey and Lynchy. So they run over to the door and do this big theatrical opening of the door, and it's just Filthy Ralph. And he...
Forgot I invited you.
Yeah. Yeah, boys, I brought you a bottle of wine, but I drunk it in a taxi. Now, that's a perfect mirror, if I can take a little sidestep here, to, if you remember in Blackadder 2, where Blackadder has to go and see the wise woman. The wise woman, the wise woman. 2 things, my lord, must ye know of the wise woman. First, she is a woman. Second, she is wise. Thank you. Anyway, so Edmund Blackadder.
Illuminate the link between those two.
Okay, so he thanks the young lady for her assistance in directing him to the wise woman by saying, "Thank you, young crone. Here is a purse of monies," and he holds up his leather pouch of money. "Here is a purse of monies, which I'm not going to give to you." Which is a brilliant gag delivered awesomely. But this is the same technique. Ben Elton's employing at exactly the same time. So he goes, "I bought you a bottle of wine," holds up the bottle of wine, "but I drunk it in a taxi," and then, hands him the empty bottle. So it's exactly the same gag. Don't worry, it's not in the way I've told it, it's the way it is on screen. So go and look both of those up. So they're pretty disappointed that it's only Filthy, and so they all sit around the table after a brief argument, and they wait for the guests of honour to arrive, and we see the lit candles burn down to little stubs showing the hours have passed. Someone's under the table just...
Yeah, I did like that. Yeah, that was really good. And Richie actually narrates that. After the candles go down, what does he say?
Much time has passed.
Much time has passed.
Yeah. This whole show is totally full of them just talking straight to the camera and everything. Anyway, so we're at the end of the episode and nothing's happened, and Filthy sort of says, "Richie, what time did you put on the invites?" And he goes, "Well, 6:30. Look, I've got them here. Tarbies, Bruceys, Leches.
They're all here.
I forgot to post the invites." And that's the plot wrapped up. And it's the end of the episode, but of course the gas hadn't been lit, it had only been switched on, and the candles are still burning, and the oven blows up and there's a big explosion which blows a hole in the wall.
Yes, and something I'd never noticed before was these faces which appear behind the hole where the oven used to be.
Yeah.
Never seen. Maybe it's because I'm watching it on
a decent
proper TV for the first time ever.
That's attention to detail, that is.
And you're saying that was the neighbours?
Yeah. In the neighbouring flat. And you can tell that because they've had their faces made up in the typical cartoon-style explosion thing, so their hair's all dodgy and they've got soot or explosion dirt all over their face and all that sort of stuff. And that's the end of 33 minutes, during which they've packed in 1 million gags, all of different types, from highbrow to below lowbrow.
Below.
Yeah, definitely. So before I say more, I'll hand it over to you for a second.
Well, I had a few notes. I was going to ask you about the progression from this to Bottom, because it seems to me that this was so much a blueprint for what was to come in Bottom, even though Bottom's not written by Ben Elton, is it?
No.
That's written by these guys.
Yeah.
But it seems very similar to me.
It's much faster paced than Bottom, and it's more refined, in my opinion. Having recently watched a lot of Bottom.
How's it more refined?
Bottom just has basically violence.
Yep.
And crudity.
But it's got the banter and the violence.
Oh, it's got a bit of banter, but Bottom's just slower and not as well done. I mean, that's not to say I don't like Bottom. It's a good show. But yeah, if that had Ben Elton writing it, then you'd get Filthy Rich and Catflap.
Yeah, I noticed particularly with the direct-to-camera stuff that they were doing.
Yeah.
It seemed to be very bottomy. Bottomy? Is that a thing?
It is now.
There's quite a few jokes about pedophilia, which, I don't know, did you notice that?
Yeah.
I was a bit surprised.
Well, let's say it's more about prostitution.
Well, they talk about how they're going to blackmail
Filthy Ralph.
Filthy if he doesn't help them by telling the police about his
so-called stage school.
Yeah, stage school.
Yeah.
And then later when they go to jail, they talk about it again there. And yeah, I just thought that after some of the things that's come out about the entertainment industry circa
that era and before,
that era that they're rabbiting on about, that was kind of interesting.
Sure.
But yeah, it just seemed a bit.
Well, Ben Elton was taking no prisoners in this show. It's a total attack on the complacent light entertainment industry.
Oh, so you think
So
he was really
bang on? Well,
taking the mickey out of them and
possibly so. But he could have been.
Maybe he had a bit of an inkling as to what was going on. And
well, this is the thing: is it may have been, a badly kept secret in the industry.
Yeah, might have been.
Ooh.
I mean, most of my other notes are just funny things that happened through the episode, which I'm happy to come back to if you don't talk about them yourself. Okay, let's go through some.
Yeah.
Richie's hat while he's
chef's hat.
His chef's hat while he's preparing for the dinner party. He's completely ridiculous, and he looks like a
chicken drumstick.
Looks like a chicken drumstick.
He's always totally overdressed, Richie.
Yep. Then I noticed that the setup that he's got for his dinner party, this very pretentious dinner party, there's no chair or piece of cutlery or china that matches anything else. Probably because they've all been smashed over people's heads and things like that, but it's all a complete mishmash.
Yeah.
That was really funny. I was wondering how funny this would be. Obviously, at the time, all the actors and showbiz people that are referenced were well known to the audience.
Yep.
That would have made it even funnier than it is these days. And we never knew any of those people and still found it really funny. But that would have been just raised it to another level, I reckon.
I think so.
The scene in the strip club, I thought of the Blues Brothers. Where they do the show and they're behind the
behind the wire.
Behind the wire, and the people are throwing the bottles at them and smashing and.
Yeah, good. They're throwing rotten fruit at Richie, and one of my favourite lines is timed perfectly, of course, walloped in the back of the head by a cabbage, and he goes, "Oh, that's nice. They probably couldn't afford flowers."
Yeah. Oh, maybe I could use this for my dinner party.
Yes.
And just the last thing was when they come home and everyone's due to arrive in 10 minutes, and they're basically unloading completely frozen turkeys. Whole turkeys.
In the plastic
into the oven.
Straight into the bottom of the oven.
10 minutes to go.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. Just terrible.
Yeah, it's not very practical, is it?
Yeah, so just lots of shenanigans, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. What have you got?
Well, I have thought about this, and I think that the gag per minute ratio in Filthy Rich and Catflap is higher than any other sitcom I've ever seen in my life. It's higher than most stand-up comedy gigs. You could select any given minute and there'd be maybe, up to 15 gags in it. It's that insane. That's a bit of an exaggeration. But, it's sort of up there.
No, I think it's probably true because someone will say a line, which is a gag.
Yeah.
And then they'll look to the camera and, pull a funny face or something like that. And then there's the next line and it just goes on and on and on like that for minutes and minutes. Oh. They seem to do it all in one take in the first
I think
10 minutes or something.
Yeah, but I think it's 13 minutes. Or one take or something. I mean, there's bound to be some cuts we didn't notice, but yeah, it's quite amazing. It's interesting what you just said about the looks to camera, because when we were talking about The Office not having a laugh track, and that the new laugh track is looks to camera, which you get obviously with your mockumentary stuff. But this isn't a mockumentary. This is your traditional sitcom with a laugh track. But because they're breaking the fourth wall all the time and looking to camera, they're getting the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
So you're getting your traditional gags, plus you can get all the brilliant looks to camera, which Adrian Edmondson's just a master of.
Yeah.
There's just so much added humour just with the looks he gives people after his own jokes, and then after things Rik Mayall says.
So does the script go into the looks they're going to do and all that sort of stuff, or does it just ad-lib that stuff?
I'm going to say no. I think they just do it. But then again, the camera has to be on them.
The camera has to be on them, and they have
cut
to
to
allocate the time in the
Yeah. All right, let's say yes
show
then.
to do it.
I think you're right. Oh, look, I've got so much to say, and we're probably over the 30-minute mark here. Okay, so I analysed the supermarket scene, which is exactly 4 minutes, and they pack so much into it, and it's just so fast-paced. So I've done it in like topics and gags. So they take on carcinogenic snack foods, which is the first thing they do, and then they have a go at the meat industry, they have a go at Richie's vanity, they have a go at celebrity scrounging, because you'd think celebrities who are quite rich would be able to pay for everything, but of course they probably don't pay for an awful lot of stuff.
No.
And Richie wants to trade on it. And of course, go on then, say something funny when Richie claims to be one of Britain's top comic talents, and he just comes out with the greatest comedy word of all time.
Yeah.
Plop.
Oh, mistimed it.
All these different gags they go into, and it's just bang, 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 bang. So they push over the tower of stacked cans, and then they start crushing all the fruit. And that's another consumer complaint thing. So presumably Esther Ranson hosted some sort of show where you write in and complain about things. Because they reference her. There's the frozen chicken in the
somehow
pan.
Eddie's got a
hammer
in
pocket,
his trousers.
and starts smashing up all the fruit, then turns around and goes, "This is disgusting. All this fruit is crushed and bruised."
He had to make room for the meat while throwing the hammer out of his trousers.
So he gets a frozen chicken in the pants. Eddie punches Richie in the face. The checkout girl smashes a bottle over Richie's head. And the checkout girl then afterwards crushes Richie's testicles, and then they break 2 supermarket windows and doors. And so you've got all these different topics covered and all these insane bits of violence, plus a lengthy bit in the middle where Richie's trying to tell a joke and convince the crowd he's a famous comedian. And they pack it all into 4 minutes.
Yep.
It's brilliant. Yeah, the gag per minute ratio.
It's a good sequence.
It really is. I agree. Thank you for saying that. It makes me feel better.
Do you think Richie's a forerunner for Alan Partridge? He gets a free rover.
Got me thinking.
Does he get a free rover? I can't remember. He's definitely got some kind of a deal with the local
second-hand car dealership or something.
Rover dealership.
Yeah. So I've got my notes here. So why in the Hall of Fame? Well, the gag per minute ratio alone should get it into the Hall of Fame. But there's all the talking to camera and the fourth wall breaking, which, as we've just come to the conclusion, you get the best of both worlds. And if you're I've just written down here that there's so much scope for analysis in this sitcom, even though it's seemingly just a bunch of slapstick violence, like Bottom. But on so many levels, you could really, do your honours thesis on all of this sort of stuff. It's just crazy. So if you're an egghead who's dying to say things like metatextual, it's a complete goldmine.
But it's going so fast, you don't...
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't happen, does it?
Anyway, I'll move past all that because I haven't quite thought it through. But, it's basically just Ben Elton attacking, as far as I can work out, what he sees as the entrenched, complacent, sexist, racist old comedy that seems to dominate at the time, and doing his alternative comedian thing and really having a solid go at them. And he's doing it really well and very entertainingly. Yeah, and this is why I think it might have been critically not very well received, because people whose jobs orbit around show business, like critics and minor celebs and all that, you don't go biting the hand that feeds you. And you don't want to write a review that says this is a brilliant evisceration of all the crappy stuff in the industry.
Yeah.
So, it's not critically well received. I mean, when Ben Elton's attacking anything else, like in The Young Ones, or Blackadder attacking royalty, or, doing any other sort of thing, it seems to be, oh yeah, this is brilliant, and yet Filthy Rich and Catflap's very underappreciated, I feel. Yeah. And there's the episode where Richie actually comes up with a really good game show formula and goes into the BBC to try and sell it to them. And that episode really cracks open the can of worms on on the light entertainment industry. Oh, brilliant. Anyway, so rather than me waffling on, that's where I stand on this sitcom. I think it's got everything.
Well, I have to admit that as we were watching it, I remembered pretty much 90% of everything that went on as we were watching it, and I could remember quite a few of the lines and everything like that. So it's obvious, even though I've not watched it for 20 years or something like that, it's stuck in there.
Ah, does that mean it's memorable?
Very memorable. No, I'm surprised to hear that it wasn't critically well received,
Oh.
because I've always thought it was very good.
Well, I'm very pleased to know that you've put this into the Hall of Fame. I love Filthy Rich and Catflap, and I can say without a shadow of contradiction that it's my favourite sitcom of all time.
Whoa.
I'm as shocked as you are.
Yeah.
It's a big call, isn't it?
Didn't expect you would have brought your favourite of all time along.
Yeah, this soon. And risk it being rejected. Yeah, that's true. But sometimes you need to delve into the best, most cherished bits of your collection to get the inspiration you need.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. I can see that.
Oh, brilliant.
Oh, thanks, Jeff. That was good.
No, thank you.
Thanks for taking me back down memory lane.
Oh, look, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And I'm looking forward to your next episode where we're going to find out what you're nominating. And we'll do that next time on Sitcom Showdown.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Join us next time on Sitcom Showdown when we'll be putting another 5-star episode under the microscope. And in the meantime, you can contact us with feedback on Facebook, Twitter @Sitcom Showdown, or by email sitcomshowdown@gmail.com.